Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Those of Threads of Enlightenment, and I am excited about this conversation. I've been laughing my ass off, I know. And so I want to first honor Susannah for coming here, because I know she's coming with a couple of things that are very expensive, her time. What a precious commodity, and she's willing to share some of that precious stuff with us. And so we want to honor her and say thank you. And I always recommend you guys that you must learn to honor time. She is a beautiful woman. You have to learn to love her, respect her, give her honor, and I promise you she will be on your side and reward and walk with you. The other is that journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It actually created this woman that is standing before us and sitting in all of her glory, and we want to thank her for coming and sharing that powerful journey that she has that made her and created who she is today. And so we want to honor her here at Threads and say thank you so much, Susannah, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Ken, you're going to make me start crying at the very beginning of this. A welcome, like every word that can touch the depths of my soul in a really powerful way. So yeah, thank you for that reflection and for being who you are. Wow. Yeah, I'm speechless, actually.
Thank you so much. One of the questions that I love to pose to our guests as they show up is, and I pose this question because I want to alert the audience that you're in this world, you're not by yourself. There are two journeys that we go in this world. The first is the independent one, and the rewarding one also beyond that is the interdependent relationship. So my question to you, Susannah, is how do you serve mankind?
I think you've already touched on it as we were beginning our conversation, which is I am here to reflect back to people the remembrance of the essence of who they are, what I and we call at Metamorphosis your true abundant essence. And it is my greatest joy in this lifetime and my purpose to help people remember those parts of themselves that they have forgotten, that they hid from themselves and they hid from the world, so that our world can really come back into a space of santosha, of contentment, of peace, of balance. That's what
that is the key.
I serve.
It is such a powerful explanation. I love it, to allow the audience. This is all about remembering who you are, this whole journey. Why? Because as I said on the onset, there have been some programmers that have been programming us to believe different things. They are programming you and I to believe a certain way, speak a certain way, walk a certain way. And then they had the gall to tell you that if you're outside, to stay within that, I call it the invisible fence, how they control all of us, is that we have to be normal. And I still don't know what the heck that means, but I would hate to be normal while I'm here on this planet. And so what we are trying to do here at Threads of Enlightenment is wake up all you normal people, get you out of where you're at so you can become free. So one of the things that we do here is to go back in that time machine that is called memory. We revisit the first space that we reside for a few years. We call that the family. The families consist of these two individuals, mom and dad, in some cases different. But these two individuals are traumatized to the bone. I mean, they've been abused by whoever life and so forth. They're strangers to you. Then you have your sibling, if you have any. They're strangers. And so these strangers come together and we call this thing the family, and they are now going to input data into you. What was your family like?
I love this description of our family because I definitely felt some of the strangeness growing up.
Yeah.
I often felt that abnormal kind of energy, right? And it's funny because some of my clients will say, well, is this normal when we're
Yeah.
doing work? I'm like, why would you want that?
Yeah.
I grew up with two parents who, so in some ways there was a deep blessing that at least these strangers who I ended up with loved each other very much, and I got to witness that. That was a beautiful piece and a gift that they gave me.
Yeah.
And they continue to love each other very deeply in really spectacular ways. And the introduction of children into their lives was somewhat of a curveball. And I was born and created in the midst of betrayal, that my parents were not actually together in the more formal sense when they conceived me. And it sort of led to this period of time, both in the gestation and when I was in utero, of turmoil between them, and with me as well, as I was this introduction of like, oh gosh, we got to figure out what we're going to be doing together. And then it turned into, my mother actually never thought that she would have children. And so she had resigned herself to that, and then getting used to the idea that she would have a child, and then ultimately have more children, I think created a lot of conflict because both of my parents are professional people. They're both attorneys, and they live, and now, of course, years later, as I'm moving into more non-dualistic thinking and 5D kind of thought process, I realize how intense the binary world was that they lived in, the wrong and right, the good and bad. And that was very, very strong in my upbringing. Yeah, that was sort of one of the main themes, was like, you're on this side or you're on this side. And and you better get your story straight one way or the other. And also there was a lot of beauty and kindness and academic growth in my family. But what this binary thinking led to, I have a brother who is mentally different, neurodivergent, could basically be on the autism spectrum. My sister has experienced borderline personality for many years, so like a fracturing of the psyche, and is healing now. But all of that, there was so much in my family system that was kind of swept under the rug, like many of ours. And I think it was because of the very strong binary, wrong and right kind of culture that my parents felt like they had to live in.
Yeah, it's a part of their program, and so to unhook from the program, it's very a courageous decision, but sometimes most of the time, it comes through pain, because one has to relinquish certain beliefs, certain mindsets, and to embark on something that is absolutely new. And you don't know what that looks like, and some people become fearful of that journey and decide, I'm going to stay where I'm at. And so you have this world with two lawyers wow, what a place to grow up, because I hung out, a lot of my friends are lawyers. And I can imagine the house with that type of binary thinking of good and evil, because that's what they see, that's what they're familiar with, and so one will then govern their life that way. So here you were born into this beautiful mix of flavor and all of these things. As you are developing as an individual, what was your first I would say, as far as your family, the things, the dynamics there, recollection as to how you were fitting in in that group of people?
Basically my understanding of how I tried to fit in, is that the question?
Yeah.
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 How I attempted.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, from a very young age, from the moment I became more consciously aware of myself, my answer to that family system was to just control and be in charge, because I felt like
Yeah.
nobody really was. And I was
Yeah.
the
Wow.
oldest sister. So, and with my parents often gone, which is a story that so many of our families have right now, because so many of our
Yeah.
families don't have full-time, parents, mothers, things like that. We have both of our parents away from the home, and then the children are experiencing a lot of neglect. I
Yeah.
experienced that. I experienced a lot of distance from my parents. And so I felt like I was holding the family system together. I also, from a very young age, felt like an old soul. I kind of knew
Yeah.
that about myself. And so I kind of looked around and I was like, I don't think you guys have any of this under control. You know
How
what you're
old were
doing.
you, Susan? Susanna, how old were you when you took up that mantle, if you will, to become the one that is responsible in your mind and your words, that held it together? How old were you when you put that jacket on?
The age that's coming to me is 5, because
Wow.
that's when my brother was born. My brother was born at
Okay.
5, and up until 5, I think I felt free to be me. And I was like, okay,
Hmm.
these two adults can take
Yeah.
care of me to the best of their ability. But I spent a lot of time away. I grew
Yeah.
up on a farm, which was really, really quite idyllic in terms of the physical geographic space.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time away from the home, away from the house, and out with the animals. And the animals were really the beings that raised me in a lot of ways. And that's not to take away from the wisdom my parents offered me,
Yeah.
but I bonded with the animals. And then when my brother came along, I felt this sense of responsibility and duty to support him. And then my sister came, 20 months later or so. And
Yeah.
so that then became my focus, and I felt the sort of chaos of the family, and it caused me to feel anxious. And my own way of
Hmm.
responding to that was to, my parents used to call me, they still call me the general, because I would just start like giving orders to people and telling people what to do. And
Wow.
while I couldn't necessarily actually create order or organization because of my age, I didn't have all the tools
Yeah.
that I needed. I was definitely attempting to. I was
Yeah.
trying, because I didn't have full trust in the caretaking system that was given to me. Mhm.
Your story is very interesting in the sense that I grew up in nature. To me, some of the best teachers are there. The animals, the trees, the wind. They are some of the best teachers I've encountered in my life. And actually, even today, I still rely on them to kind of help me to stay balanced. Like when I'm having a tough day, I go to the beach, girl. I listen to the waves and I do my meditation there. And it brings me into a space where I am able to be grounded. I'm focused and I can gain understanding from the disturbance that is within me and learn from it and move through. Um, and that is when we are called, that's why we are called to live in the present all the time. Because if we are outside of the present, we're missing much. and we are in that dream state. In that dream state, we have probably about 80-90% of the world walking in that dream state. And so their world and life goes by them before they even know it. So here's this young girl, boss, the general, spitting orders to everyone else, making sure that they get the rules right. And she has experienced freedom to a degree, because that freedom came before your siblings came. You were able to run around. So after that restriction of your freedom, how did it begin to affect you? I know it does.
Well, I wanted to, you brought up a memory when you talked about the wind and the trees,
Yeah.
that I don't often share because it's like weird, but I wanted to share it because I feel like this is the
I'm not
space.
normal, so let's go.
Bring the weird. When I was growing up during that period of freedom, I remember going on like a little mission around our farm. We had 50 acres, which was a big
Mhm.
space to run
Yeah.
around as a 4-year-old. And I went on a mission to taste and eat the leaf or a part of every plant on the farm,
Wow.
so that I could understand and be a part of all the plants, all the native
Mhm.
plants that were there. And it was just it was intuitive. And I'm sure that there would be people who'd be like, oh gosh, some of those are poisonous. And I was fine. Everything was fine.
Yeah. Well, in
But
moderation,
in moderation, yeah, you just
Yeah.
one, right? Not the whole
Yeah.
plant.
Yeah.
But I think that and things like that of really, in Stranger in a Strange Land, he calls it grokking, where you
Yeah.
grok something, you eat it, and so it becomes a part of you, and then you fully understand it. And I feel like that was what nature was for me, and it did she represented freedom.
Yeah.
And what happened was, when these responsibilities, as an old soul, I think I took it quite quickly to responsibility and duty, like you were talking in the beginning of what a gift it is to serve. And I
Yeah.
do have that natural sense in my body, but I feel like the freedom kind of got cut off a little sooner than I would have wanted. And what I did then was just focus entirely on responsibility and duty. I kind of shifted my attention. And while I didn't feel like I wanted to be the matriarch of the family, it wasn't that kind of responsibility that I wanted. I focused then directly on achievement
Yeah.
as a method of service. And I remember quite quickly after, my mantra for life became, like, my purpose in life as a young girl was to create positive social change. And I just set my sights completely on that. And then I started to listen to my father's version of what that was, and become completely immersed and dedicated in this like path of achievement and responsibility and duty to become a leader, which became obsession with the military, with leadership kind of focus, with politics, with anything that had to do with creating what I thought to be at that time social change. And all of that sort of weighed on my shoulders, from probably the age of 7 or 8 years old, when I started to understand some of the challenges that existed in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a 7-year-old to be dealing with and walking with as their companion, as they're beginning their journey out to the world. How did this girl relate to others outside of the family? What was your relationship style like as they started to develop that as a young individual?
Because our farm was far away from where I went to school, Um, and I remember my mother being very overwhelmed, so she didn't want as many like friends coming over. That caused me to be alone a lot. I was alone or with my siblings quite often because we were physically sort of isolated.
Yeah.
And like I said, I related a lot to the animals and spent a lot of time with like our pack of dogs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes say I was raised by dogs. But when I did go out into the world, I my parents worked in sort of these aristocratic spaces in the
Yeah.
hospitality industry with hotels and things. So I would spend a lot of time with adults. And I started helping out with my parents' law firm when I was very young, and then going to dinners and sitting like a lady and learning how to be poised and really like fitting into this idea of formalized, civilized, you know, feminine being
Yeah.
from a very young age. And then that made it a little difficult to connect with my peers who were my age, because not only did I feel like an old soul, but I felt like I could have a conversation with a 50-year-old much better than I could with
Wow.
anyone who was like, 10 or 11. And learning how to interact with people of my own age was quite the task. I struggled with it. And on top of that, because of where I lived near Atlanta, Georgia, the cultural like differences of the places I grew up in, I was constantly
Yeah.
thrust into these wildly different environments. So I'd be in an environment like at a 5-star dinner with these people who were in the corporate world, and then I would go to the inner city gym where I was on an all
Yeah.
black gymnastics team and I was the only white girl. And a lot of these girls
Yeah.
grew up in a completely different socioeconomic background than I did. So I was often an outsider. And then I went to a private
Yeah.
school where there was a big population of Jewish community, and then Indian, an Indian community as well. So I was like, where are my people? Like, who are my people? And I had, and on one hand, it taught me how to really connect with anyone and everyone everywhere. And on the
Yeah.
other hand, I always, always, always felt like I was this little island moving around, just kind of popping in and seeing what other people are doing and observing them without actually feeling deeply connected. I really never found my community and my people until quite recently, actually.
A burden for a young one to be carrying as an individual,
Yeah.
now heading in, getting closer to becoming, if you will, independent from mom and dad as you're moving through your life, and to have that as a part of your mindset already is going to be taxing on your being as you move through. So I know where you went for when you're heading is, deciding to go to college or the military or things like that. What was that conversation like? And why did you go to, you took the route that you did versus going we're at these forks in our road in our life. And it's very fascinating to me, the reason behind the situation, the decision, what drove that? What was your North Star that sent you in that area where you went to as far as the military?
Yeah, the story around this I've been massaging lately. I had a lot of blame for my father in the early direction of my life, because he was so persuasive, and so he's a litigator by training
Yeah.
and by practice. It's what he does for a living, is
Yeah.
to persuade people.
Mm-hmm.
to believe in him. And he's great at it. He's amazing at it. But when he is, when he was as a father, he would repeat these things and just say, like, this is, this would be good for you. I'd recommend this. Here's some thoughts. And it gave me not only a North Star, but also a bit of a strict path to follow. And if I didn't, I had this feeling, if I didn't, then my father wouldn't accept me, right? I wouldn't be accepted if I didn't follow this path that he had in mind. And I believe and trust that all of it was exactly as it should be, because I needed to have that very strong discipline. And of course, the military was the right place for me for that period of time. But I remember struggling with, do I go in the Marine Corps or the Peace Corps? Which seem so opposite. They seem so opposite.
It is opposite.
They are, right? Like, one's about war and one's about peace. Like, what? And as so at 4 years old, my father took me to watch my older brother, my half brother, who's much older, graduate from boot camp. And I saw the women marching across the parade deck. And I said, there are girl ones. And my father said, of course, the Marine Corps discriminates equally against everyone and you can join today, And it was in that moment, I was 4 years old, that I was like, I'm going to be in the Marine Corps. And like my father, he was in during Vietnam. He was an attorney in the military, in the Marine Corps. And then he suggested, when I was around 12, that I go to the Naval Academy, which was the college that would allow me to graduate as an officer and become a Marine. And so that path felt a bit decided for me. It definitely felt that way. And I am learning now how to understand that I needed that sense of direction to go into that service, to have all of those experiences, which then led to the spiritual awakening. But at the time, there was a part of me that really wanted to go into like humanitarian work and to just be dedicated to peace for an entire lifetime. But I'm realizing I needed to see war. I needed to see it firsthand. And my father helped me.
Well, I think when you see war, you appreciate peace. It becomes more valuable. One honors the fact that it's, but when you see war, when you see the cost of it, that when you move away from that, peace becomes intoxicating, if you will. And so it's, like I said, nothing in life, because you said as a young girl you wanted to work with people and help them and so forth. So you needed to see some dark things so you can have a better understanding. And I am definitely positive that being in that space for a short time in the Marines, it helped you to appreciate and be able to, because you bring certain things out of there, certain systems, certain mindsets, certain things that are very valuable that you can only get from being in that space, because they'll push you beyond what you call, where the body says, yeah, that's good. And they push you under there. And then the body goes, okay, that's good. And then they push you further than that. And your body starts asking you, what the heck are you doing? And, but they keep stretching you. And again, the spiritual and the natural world mirrors each other. The spiritual world will always stretch you. You will never, ever. Complacency is the enemy of personal development. And once you're in that path, you will not be allowed to be in any complacent position, because something will happen that will turn your world upside down. So here you are, you picked, or you were guided, you volunteered. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
You volunteered to go into the Marines. Once you got there, because that is a powerful place to learn certain mindsets. When you arrive, and you realize, what the hell did I just do? How did you begin to make the adjustment to now that you're there? What was that mindset, the thought patterns were as you began to realize, okay, showtime?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the interesting things about growing up in my family was my parents did recognize from a very early age that I was a little bit of an old soul. So they gave me a lot of room, even though there was still very, structured pathways. They gave me a lot of room to just be who I was. And so
Yeah,
I still had a lot of agency and control over myself and my way of moving through the world. And they just sort of supported me in that.
yeah.
But once I got to the military, sense of independence was very challenged
Yeah,
because not only did I have one or two people who were bosses, watching over me and sort of restricting me, I had an entire organization and a
yeah.
lineage that was hundreds of years old that was
Hmm.
like, you are going to look and act this way. And if you
Yeah.
don't, bad things will happen. And ooh, that level of oppression was powerful. Um, Very interesting because the Naval Academy didn't feel that way so much because it was an academic institution. There was a lot of structure. However, I had the freedom of my mind to be able to be creative. But once I joined the Marine Corps, there's a program you go through as an officer called the Basic School. And I encountered a man who was my platoon commander during that training. He was the very first boss I had in the Marine Corps, who was, by all accounts, legitimately misogynistic, like just did not like women. He was really the only one in the Marine Corps that I encountered who had this bias against women leaders. And
Wow.
he made sure that those of us who were women, especially the ones who were, more independent like myself,
Yeah.
um, felt controlled and
Yeah.
felt his sort of wrath a little bit. And it
Hmm.
was the first time in my life that I experienced the feeling of being completely out of control, not in control of my destiny or what was going to happen to me. It was the first time that I was being asked and pushed to surrender. And I had very little practice at that. I had not had that level of authority or restriction in my life up until that point. And it felt, I felt like a total victim to the bigger system. It was the first time I felt that like victim consciousness
Yeah.
start to bubble up within me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That system is designed to break you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, that's the purpose of it all. Any
Yeah.
of the military, they'll break anything and everything in you, and then they'll train you to be killer.
That's right. Yep.
So
Break you
that's what.
down and then build
Yeah,
you back up. Yep.
that's
Yes.
exactly what they do, and they will break every emotion kind of thing that you're holding on to, and the purpose, as you said, Susannah, is surrender. You got to surrender. And once you surrender, as painful as it is, that's when they'll start making you, if you will, into the mold and the reality that they choose for
Yeah.
you. And you just have to bite your tongue and realize that if you act up, they'll do something about it. And you just got to wait. And so,
You get a good snack. And what's
yeah,
interesting though is that because of the being I am, I don't know, I feel very blessed. I feel the universe has been really watching
yeah,
out for me and co-creating with me. Is that in addition to experiencing these little pockets of discrimination and the things that started to kind of break me down and could have changed me into this
yeah,
like automaton, right? This zombie. I also was gifted later in the military these guardian angels, these men who were leaders, usually like higher up. I got along really well with the ones who were, colonels and above. And
Well,
they
you're a
watched
general,
over.
remember?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we got along. all the captains and below were always threatened, right? They felt threatened
Yeah,
by me. I didn't get along with them very well. But anybody who was in the higher ranks usually really, really watched over me. And I had a few that were there, and they felt like, they still to this day feel like fathers, like protectors, like
yeah,
these guardian angels that were there to understand me and to get me a little bit, and to make that experience, at least the last few years of that experience, quite like I didn't have to be built back up in the image of the military. Like they helped
yeah.
me maintain my independence and maintain my sense of rebellious, kind of energy. And I'm amazed that I had these humans there, because I don't know if I would have come out as clear, or remembered as much without them.
I think in that arena, in any arena, basically, those that are able to allow themselves a real teacher is not threatened by you. They look at your personality and kind of learn to work with your personality.
Mm-hmm.
And because those type people, under a crunch, they are the ones that will perform the best because
Mm-hmm.
they are they would be thinking outside of the box, if you will, because they are allowed to express themselves. And so those are the ones that will be able to do some things that others will not because they've been programmed to behave a certain way. Whereas that individual that it was allowed to maintain that personality, but yet function within the rigidness of the system, those are the ones that will do a tremendous amount of value and things on the field, if you will. And so here you are, you've got your mentors, your angels. Well, your first teacher was pretty good. And he wanted to break your skull and all the other things. And then you had your reprieve. They say there's a time of season for everything. And so we have our wars, we have our season of rest. And you had your season of rest at the end of your time there. So here you are, you're thinking of, let me get out, it's time to go.
Mm-hmm.
Which direction did you go? Did you go straight into peace or did you just got lost?
I love that perspective, because I I did not go straight into peace, not by a long shot.
Yeah,
I needed a sort of step,
yeah,
to step my way there. But for the first time, I stopped trying to control the path of my life, which was
yeah.
a huge step for me. Before, I had made all these decisions when I was a certain age, right? And been like, this is the path and this is where I'm going, and nothing's going to stop me from it. And that's powerful. And also, what I've learned now is that going with the flow and
Hmm.
listening to the synchronicities and the gifts of the universe is a really powerful way to live. It's so that you get so much more from that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And I got this job opportunity that was way outside of what I had originally planned for myself. I did want to go continue in sort of public service, and was going to look into the Foreign Service and look into the State Department and things like that. And I had applied to all these different master's programs to study public policy and to go into politics, continue my journey toward matrix leadership.
Yeah,
And I got an opportunity to work for some of the top leadership at Facebook, now Meta, which is like, yeah,
yeah,
the military in the Matrix world,
yeah,
and the organization, and I decided to take that opportunity, and
yeah.
And I was there for 3 years, and then I ended up working at a startup in the Bay Area after that. But what I learned about that was I still don't love the way the corporate world works. And
Yeah.
it's time for that to also shift, because it had a lot of overlaps with the military and the hierarchical systems there. And I got to see it from the inside. I also got to see some of the most, quote, powerful people in the world firsthand in small settings that introduced me to that kind of leadership, and how much of that I really wanted to be, and how much I didn't also resonate sometimes with that style of leadership in that system. And I ultimately benefited from this because I was thrust into a community in the Bay Area that began to explore with plant and began to explore with plant medicines as a result of that, which I don't know if I ever would have done if I wasn't in that physical location. So really
Yeah.
the geography of it was really powerful for me. But I will say that some of the darkness I saw in the corporate world, not just at Facebook, actually some of the startups were darker, and there was so much ick
Yeah.
in Silicon Valley, right? That I was like, man, like this is the swamp. This is the swamp. And I was drawn right there. I was taken right into the center of it. So it was like war, going to Afghanistan, seeing war firsthand, having my idea of God completely disillusioned and everything dissolved, and then going into the corporate war, for money and power and greed.
Yeah.
And while I do believe that like Facebook and some of these bigger organizations do have some real goodness and some good humans that are there and have a lot of love for humanity, the system as a whole was very sick, and I could see the sickness more directly when I was in it. And yeah, it led me on my spiritual awakening journey, my path back to myself, very powerfully.
Yeah. It, yeah, I was there in the corporate world,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in the healthcare sector, and yeah, I got stories in there that will traumatize me if I start talking about it.
Yep.
But it's a different space. Those guys, their eyes have no pupil.
Mm-hmm.
You are amongst the wolves, the lions, the big boys, and they can smell you when you're a mile away if you are injured, if you will, and they will destroy you in a second. So it's a rough space to be in, and like I said, I've been there, and I've known a lot of people that it forced into the spiritual realm, because when you see such darkness, you have to be crying out that there's more to life. And I remember being there going, there have to be more, or this is, and I could see the attraction for some of those guys when they take their life, because they don't see anymore. They've been exposed to such darkness, and then they're looking at it going, wow, this is it. And then the next thing you know, they're no longer here. So here you guys were taking, I call it the express elevator, when people try all the medicines and stuff like that. The thing about the medicine is that your mindset plays a great deal, your location, a lot of that stuff, the energy that is there, the mood, the conversations, all of that stuff plays into it, because I've seen a couple of people that have lost themselves there as well. And but I recommend it to people who are strong enough to do it. You can't be weak-minded and go into that space, because you can get lost emotionally. And you can really get messed up. But it's a powerful place because it's stripped away all of the worries, the concerns, the ego, and it'll walk straight into the area that you need to be to begin to ask those questions, experience those insights that you need. But after you come down from the mountaintop, girl, you still got to live with all the crazies. So here you are. You got a chance to experience that, and you started pursuing your spirituality, if you will. As you began to pursue that switch from the military, the natural world, in the sense of you have to have your sixth sense when you're in war. You have to have all these different things. And now you're going to put that aside and become spiritual. How was that transition?
It's interesting you say the mountaintop, because I was literally meditating with a plant medicine on a mountain when I got this download from the universe, or from the greater thing, that showed me sort of the perfection of who I am based on my bloodlines, of all the ancestors that came together and created me, that this one and then this one and this one, and they poured into me these exact qualities and talents. And you know, the programming through the bloodlines and through that ancestry that activated these different parts of my spirit. So I would say that the remembrance and the process of awakening for me was, at first, I just went into a state of disillusionment. And I'm with you on, you really do need to have a solid ground, a solid grounding in order to be able to take the quote express elevator. Because if you don't, you absolutely can lose yourself and you can get stuck in any parts of these, because if you awaken too quickly, I mean, there's even things like Kundalini syndrome, where people have a Kundalini awakening and then they get very sick for a long time. So I'm a big believer in being held in those spaces and ensuring that your integration process is very, very well curated. But probably because of my soul age and the discipline I developed in the military, to come back to self, right? To just keep coming back to my center. I didn't get so fractured that I lost myself entirely. And that was what led to the awakening. But there was a period of time where I felt very fractured. And it was after a powerful medicine, Bufo, that I worked with. And for about a year while I was working in the corporate world, I remember just sitting on the bus to work, and I would just look outside, and I wasn't there. I wasn't present in my body. And for a solid year, I was like, what am I doing? Who am I? Why? You know, all those questions. And it led to a complete deconstruction of my spiritual self, which I now understand comes in waves. Like it'll keep coming. But that first one, that first like dark night of the soul and the deep questioning and disillusionment was hard, was really hard. And I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to really come back from it.
Courage becomes really important in the walk of your journey. I call it the walk of faith. We don't have a clue what the heck is going to turn out. And so you have to, as much as anyone says to you about the clue, no, I'm clueless. I have learned to allow myself to be synchronized, if you will, in my work. Sometimes I feel a pull to this particular area, And, I don't know. I'm like, okay, I'll go with it. And I meet someone that the conversation, the exchange was beautiful. It was something I was meditating on. I needed some answers, and I was pulled towards that direction. There is this individual that was there, set up from the beginning of time for us to meet so that they can offer me the keys that I have been waiting for to open that particular door to usher me into. So when you live like that, you had mentioned it earlier, life begins to become much more fun instead of the rigid focus of accomplishing things. It's not, you accomplish much. And one of the things that you will learn within walking that way is gratitude. One of the most powerful tools you will ever, especially when you're living that type of lifestyle, because you were heading for a cup of coffee, you got to pull, go somewhere else. You showed up, and this thing that you've been asking for is right there. What else can you do but express gratitude? It was totally out of your control. Someone was listening, and
Yeah.
someone cares. Someone cares. Some people say that the Indians call him the white spirit, the great white spirit. Some say the force. Some say God. I simply call him Dad because I believe that my father cares, and I have a relationship with someone that I could call my dad, and I know that conversation can be very spicy sometimes because I'm not always happy with my father, if you will, if you know what I'm talking about. So here you are. You got your awakening, and we all know about the mountaintop, you told me. So when you came back down to reality and you started living, because it does take time to make the adjustment, nothing is instantaneously, years it takes. When you started to synchronize as you turning that ship, that giant ship that is you, and your rudders that you have inside, those small little inklings. What were some of those tools that you brought into your life to help you turn that ship? I know some people talk about meditation, journaling, all these different tools. What were some of those tools that you brought in to help you turn that ship and move it to another direction?
So many
Yeah.
tools because I felt very lost. And I love this point on gratitude because it was the first time that I was without a North Star, right? That my North Star
Yeah.
was disappearing and I couldn't see it anymore. So I had this opportunity and this moment to be like, where am I going? Where am I
Yeah.
going?
Yeah.
And that feeling of lost led to me starting to notice the subtleties of life a lot more and the synchronicities
Yeah.
and the little moments that came together, and to have so much more gratitude. My mom calls it making a little parade out of life. Like every
Yeah.
little gift became very precious. And so I would say that that's sort of mindfulness, right? Just being starting to become present. I read Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, and then The Power of Now, and it
Yeah.
changed my whole perspective on presence and the power of presence. So I would say presence was a tool. And then in order to remain more present in the moment, to actually physically and emotionally and spiritually be here, to be able to see, because I'd get glimpses, right? Like the
Yeah.
clouds would move and I'd get
Mm-hmm.
glimpses of that North Star. I meditated. I took a meditation course. I literally took a 3-day meditation like workshop. And on the third day, I purged for like 2 hours. I literally like vomited for like 2
Yeah.
hours. And it started to help me understand how much was built up in my system, holding me back from being present. And then I spent a year, mostly during COVID, meditating and and doing anger burns. Anger burning was really important for me. I had an immense amount of anger that had built up in my system, and what I would call rage, like sacred rage that was in my womb. And as a woman, I also began to do a lot of work on my pelvic region. So I got pelvic therapy. And so I would say there was a physical element to it, physical practices of clearing my physical body of a lot of the trauma that had been built up, not only in this lifetime, but in others as well. So I regularly went to pelvic therapy. I started to get body work. I did breath work. I would say every couple of weeks, I would do breath work sessions, like holotropic breath work. I really love the work of Stanislav Grof. And those states would release a lot of that. So I was in a stage of cleansing and releasing.
Yeah.
And then screaming into pillows was really effective.
I still do that once in a while.
Yeah. Super effective.
Yeah. I got neighbors, man.
Yeah. And at some point, I started to realize how important nature was, and I had forgotten my connection with her. And I'd let that sort of go. I'd lived in an urban area in the middle of the city for a long time. And so I started to go to nature as medicine, and to go back to her, and to talk to the trees, and to allow the trees and the leaves and the wind to teach me and to remind me. And that then built into a more daily practice where I came back to the discipline of a spiritual practice. My grandfather was a bishop in the Methodist Church. So growing up, I did have a lot of grounding and strength in a spiritual practice, but I had lost it because that version didn't resonate with me anymore. So I found my own through nature and through connecting. Actually, I connected a lot with my ancestors and my grandfather during that particular period of time. A lot. He was speaking to me from beyond this realm and guiding me in my practice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such an important
prayer
point that you put out. Yeah, prayer is one of those things. For all of you that are listening, let me give you some advice. There's a couple of questions that you need to ask yourself. Who am I? Take some time and who am I apart from the acting that we do? The acting meaning the jobs, the roles that we have, mom, dad, friend, whatever those roles are. Who are you? It's a really powerful question. And then go inside to begin to seek the answers. The answers are there. The other important question is, what am I doing? Susannah mentioned it. What am I doing? What are you doing? Take a look at your life. Take a look at your perspective. It's your perspective that you have concerning your situation that is keeping you in bondage. And so what you need to do is find coaches, find individuals like Susannah, find some people who have gone through some stuff, as I said to people, because kids might be listening, so I gotta say stuff.
Yeah.
And so, the reason why I always tell people to go to those type people is because they have been through the forest, the deserts, those hard places where one get lost. And they were able to locate the compass to give them the direction to come out. And when you are lost in your forest and you call for help and they show up, you have to trust that they know where to take you. They were roaming around that forest for many years, 5, 10, longer in many cases. But you are there for several years, maybe a year or 2 years, and you call upon your guide in Susannah. She knows, because she was lost in that damn forest for so long, she knows where those crevices are. She knows where the safe spots are. And once she locates you by questions.
Mhm.
And once she locates you, she will be able to take you along the path that is necessary to get you out of where you are in faster than she was able to come out. And so, guys, this woman has been in front of us, giving us from herself, from her being, offering us the insights, the wisdom, the knowledge that resides within her. And I want to welcome you guys in her space. We're going to provide everything for you to get to her. I mean, we haven't even touched anything, she and I. And, we're just dancing around on the surface. Susannah, I want to talk to me for a minute. I am in distress, and I've listened to the podcast with Ken and you talk, and I contact you. What am I expecting?
These days, you can expect first compassion and connection. Just at first, because the chances are, whatever distress you're in, I or someone close to me that I've known has been there in some way. And I know how challenging and how traumatizing the world is that we live in right now, from the systems that we've built to the programming that we've grown up in. So you're not alone at all. And then you can expect that I will, or a member of our team will ask you, what are you looking for in some ways? And you may not know exactly what you're looking for, but we will ask you the questions that you need in order to be able to reflect back to us what journey you're on right now. Because I don't want to guide you on a journey that I want to guide you on. I want to guide you toward the remembering of your own self, right? Which means you are the wisdom keeper. You are the one that knows exactly where you're going, or the guides that guide you, right? So I will ask you self-reflective questions and then reflect back to you what I hear. And then I'll give you the thoughts and the tools and things like that have worked for me, and also the systems that we've started to create and build that we know have been proven. I do still believe in a lot of scientific method, right? Like, if I see a thing work many times for many different people, then there's some truth there, right? There's some truth.
Yeah.
So, and there's value. So our work is generally a process of discovery, and we have different methods of that. We have experiences that are more peak, that take you deeper into consciousness and into altered states that allow you to remember who you are from a more outside perspective or from a deeper spiritual perspective. And then we have systems and programs and support for your transformation that are more step by step, that are a little more like, okay, we're going to make a daily practice with the tools that resonate with you and help you to remember who you are just by waking up every day and looking in the mirror and saying a prayer to yourself.
Absolutely beautiful. Guys, again, we're going to provide everything for you to get to reach her and her team, because you're not alone, man. This is one of the reasons why I put Threads of Enlightenment together. And the name Threads of Enlightenment means that we are weaving a beautiful tapestry together while we're all here. And the purpose of those threads is for us to enlighten each other in the sense where we have, through our conversations and the utilization of all these tools that one, and the scientific piece that has been proven. And the thing I put it this way: when you have scientific proof something has been tried over generations and it's working, the Bible says the truth is what's going to set you free. So if that thing has been working for a while, there is some truth there. And if you find something where there's some truth there, it has the ability to make you free. Your choice. And so this place that we call Earth is governed by our choices. And our world is being created. You are a creator, as we listen to Susannah talk about hers, how she created the world that she wanted and what she expects. But the beautiful thing about creation is that some cases one must be specific in what you are demanding from the creation. As I grew up in the church, I remember God said, he shows up when this place is dark. And he says, I need some light. And so he said, let there be light. He called and he was very specific in his demand. I am a creator just like him. And I tell people, I used to preach, traveling, preaching. And I asked these preachers one day, where was the man when, according to our faith, when God was creating the earth? And they couldn't answer me. You know where he was? He was in God, created, co-creating the earth with him. Let there be light. So you and I know how to create. As Susannah said, what we have forgotten who we are. I and you, all of us, created this universe together. And then he released us individually in these bodies for us to now enjoy our creation. Don't let the programmer steal it from you. Learn who you are. Remember, you created this rock and the universe and everything in it. And then when he was done with that, that's when he released the man into the framework, into the unit that would keep him legal on this planet. So that's who you are, guys. You just have to remember. Susannah, I want to thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. We got to do this again. I had so much fun.
Yes.
We do have to do it again.
Part two.
I know.
Part two.
But thank you so much for coming and beginning to engage with us of who you are and what you have learned so far in your journey. And we know that we will tap into your being for even more as we continue our relationship together here at Threads of Enlightenment with you and your peeps at, in all the different places. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for spreading the word, your word of co-creation, and the word that we all need to hear of us being creators and reminding people of who they are and of remembrance. It is so critical during this time, and especially critical, I feel. There's a lot of women speaking about this, right? Because we're like, hello, like the system's not working. And to have men speaking this and reminding and remembering is so powerful for our world. So thank you for using this voice and just being such an open-hearted being. And remembering me. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.